the recording. Okay, yeah, so welcome to our lecture number 3 of screen design. And let's dive straight away to our overview of our lecture so we can see where are we right now. Today we're lecture 3 here. We're still in introduction to HTML, CSS, right? Today we want to dive a little bit more into CSS as we have started last week a little bit of that already, but now we want to go a little bit deeper into it and understand that a little bit better. And then next week we're going to go into introduction of some other concepts like the box model, etc. So step by step, we're learning more about how to build our website, learning more about HTML, but also about the styling. Okay, so in particular, what we want to do today is, just check here something. Okay, yeah, we want to go into the topic of okay, hang on. Put everybody to mute. So yeah, we want to learn more about CSS, specifically understanding what are classes, because you have to deal a lot with classes, especially also later when you do a finding project in Bootstrap, for example. So we want to understand what is a class, how do we define it, okay, how do we deal it in CSS, and how do we deal with it in HTML, right? Also, we want to learn about what is an ID, okay? Also, that's an important thing. Also, we want to see how can we change actually fonts, because maybe based on your target group of your website, you want to choose a particular font type, right? It should fit to your target group, whatever you put on the website. Let me go here. A few more people to put them to mute. Okay, yeah, so that's that. Then we want to learn also how to use Google fonts, because Google has a huge database of fonts that we can tap into and really be able to select a nice and suitable font from there. And we will learn today how we do that. So after that, I want to show you how we can add a call to action button to our page. Our call to action buttons, we have learned, I think, not last week, but the week before, is a very important thing to put on our website for engagement reasons, especially also when people come to the website. The first moment they read stuff, we want to keep them on the website. Therefore, we do not want to put a lot of text on the website, right? But rather a little bit to teaser them to become interested, and then we make a button for more, read more, or etc. And this is the call to action button. So today we want to look at that in HTML. How can we turn a button into a link where people then could go further? And you can see that that's quite easy. We have learned already last week. Did we know about a button? No, anyway, you will by the end of today have understood that. Then also YouTube videos, quite common nowadays to embed YouTube videos to a website. Also here we briefly want to look into that, how this works. What is the code for that, and where do you get the source code? Because it's more or less a copy-paste thing. Going to YouTube, click there a few times and get some code from there. We take it and we straight away put them into our HTML page, and that's it. And we make save and it appears then when we check it with the browser. Okay, that's roughly it that I have in mind for today's session. So by the way, can everybody hear me properly and see the slides? Can you just somebody indicate that in the chat? So I have a kind of feedback. Okay, very good. Thanks. Yeah, my voice is getting a little bit worse step by step. So I try to get it through because my throat ache is yeah, got heavier during this morning, but I hope it's not gonna go too bad. Okay, so then let's jump into our stuff. Well, what did we do last week? Remember something? Well, we have been looking at the HTML document basic structure, and we learned, yeah, always there should be doc type there at the top. You should have here HTML tag, starting tag and ending tag, and then two parts, a head part and the body part. And do you remember what is the difference between the head part and the body part? Well, in the body part, you should put all information or the stuff that should be rendered visually to our screen. All those elements should be placed there. However, additional information for that the browser should know about our page, but which should not show up visually, that should be put into the head part, roughly speaking. Okay. So then we've been going through these different elements. These ones I mentioned. The title element, that is something that goes to the head. You can put here, yeah, starting tag, ending tag, remember. And yeah, with HTML elements, there's always a starting tag and then ending tag, right? And also for visual clarity, I recommend you keep indentation properly sort of organized, in the sense that if you start a tag and end the tag in between, you try to put them on the same part here, I mean, horizontally. Then if you add new elements, like head starting here and here, and body here, they are sort of in the same, yeah, they have the same starting point. You put them also vertically in the same. However, then once you add more things inside these elements, always indent them, yeah? And especially later in the body part, which can grow quite big in your HTML website. If you make this indentation always constantly, meaning if there's a new element inside a bigger element, then always indent that. And this will help you later to read your code much easier. It gives this visual structure to you, and it makes your life much better and doesn't confuse you so quickly. There are enough situations, I think, where we, for example, if you need to find a fault in your code later, because you think you have coded everything correctly, but still somewhere some spelling mistake is there, then the visual structure will give you really a lot of help, because you can then easily sort of keep the overview of your code and don't get your head mixed up so easily. All right, so then we learned last week, A stands for what? For anchor point, which was a link, right? Whenever you want to place a link to your HTML page, you use A, H2, H1, etc. These are headlines, and P is you use as an element whenever you want to add a paragraph, meaning text to it. Image, IMG tag, we learned also whenever you want to place an image on your HTML website, we use this IMG tag, and we need to give what to in the same as is information with the image tag. We need to give the path of the image that should be shown, which includes the name also of the image, right? Because the browser needs to know which image should it use and show. Okay, so here an overview, a few links to an overview of a reference list of all HTML tags. Then remember, whenever you want to add comments to your HTML code or to your CSS code, you can use this syntax here. So starting, ending, and in between, you can put your comment. Or if it's in CSS, within this the style. Well, today we're gonna. Well, I'll come to that later. Anyway, in CSS, If you want to put a comment there, do it like this, starting and ending, and anything in between, you put your own words. Okay, then remember I told you also what you should strive for when you build a website is separate content from styling. Okay, so content is what we sort of generate with or build up with our .html website, and styling is what we do with CSS. And typically we have a different file for CSS. That's what we're going to start with also today in a minute. But let's think, what is CSS again? CSS is about manipulating HTML elements the way they look, okay? And CSS stands for cascading style sheets, and there is a certain syntax with it. So you always have a so-called selector, curly brackets starting, ending brackets, and then we have so-called declarations, and declaration consists of a property and value separated by a semicolon, and always after each declaration, don't forget to put the semicolon. It's important. Okay, and while as a selector, actually we can have different types of selectors. I think I've shown you the slide. Hang on, where is it? This one. So the element name, I think that's the one we have been using so far, which is just the HTML element, right? And today we're going to learn we can use a class also as a selector, because when you make definitions in CSS, we need to make clear our definitions to which element it refers to in the HTML code, right? That's how we need to make a connection between CSS and the code in our HTML document. And while we can use a class for that, or an ID, I mean address that element by its ID or by its class, etc. Today we're going to learn what is an ID and the class in a moment, soon actually, and how we deal with that. Okay, so yeah, then what I want you to do is you now open your script editor, and again open the same file that we had sort of finished last week at the end of the class. Go and reopen that file with the script editor, and also please open the one in the same file with your browser, with the Google Chrome browser as well. All right, so once you have that, then let's go again into this coding modus, because yeah, I'll let you do that now to open the file. Okay, so the first thing what we want to do is we want to learn how can we now take our CSS code away into a separate file. Okay, and in order to do that, well, we call that put it into external style sheet. All right, so which means we're going to create now a new file which has the ending .css, and now we need to tell in our HTML file how can our browser know about that other CSS file. Well, by linking, we call it linking, that other CSS file inside our HTML file. And we do that by putting this line here in the head part, okay? In our HTML document, we're going to add a so-called link, yeah? And we're going to refer to this file style.css, which means this file, it does not yet exist, but we need to create this first. Okay, So let me switch now to the code. And I guess should be this one. All right, this is the code from last week. And let me look at the page, how it looks in my case. The browser. And that is like this. Okay, so I have a red headline here. So some text here, another headline in black, another text, which is a paragraph. And then I have these images. They have different sizes, right? The background color of the page is orange. And I have this video here. And it plays straight away and it seems to loop through. And I have here a link, HTML. If I click that, I come to the HTML website, right? So I go back. That's basically what we do with our code that we created last week. And I can go through that code very briefly once more. So we have our headline here, right? With H1. And, I put here, this is the comment, yeah. Then I created the paragraph with a P element. I have the H2 element here, another headline, another paragraph, and then our link that I just had clicked. Remember, we're going to use the A element for anchor point, and actually the A starting element ends here. And remember, whenever you put a link there, you need to put this href, which means in here between the high commas, you need to put that URL of the destination where the browser should go to, jump to once you click that link, all right? And the text itself that you can see on the page that appears then to be the link is the one that you place in here before the ending of the A tag, anchor tag. All right, and then we have here our images. We had 4 of them, and you saw right now in the browser that they're all different sizes. And we have here the video. Remember, we put that with the help of the video tag, and you need to put autoplay muted, and then we put loop so it loops through. This can be useful, such a line, for example, if you want to place a video as a kind of background on your page. Nowadays, many landing pages have small sequences of video that just keep looping through. It's just this one line of code that does this whole thing. All right, so this is how we build it. But then I think last week we went also into cascading style sheets, CSS, and we have learned how to style the color of our headline. I put it to red, right? I just showed you it a moment ago. Probably you have to put another color here. Anyway, selector H1 curly bracket starting, ending here. And then we put here 45 pixels is then the font size. I put orange as my background color of the entire page, meaning my selector here is the body element, which is this one here, right? HTML element body that we're going to style according to this declaration, which says background color, it should be orange, right? And I think that has worked for all of you. Now the thing is, this CSS we have placed last time within our HTML page, right? Because this is our HTML file, index.html. And what we did here in the head part, the head starts here, ends here, we had put there the information starting with a style tag, ending style tag. And then within this, our information about CSS was placed. Okay, now we want to, well, this is something you can, we did for didactical reasons here. But typically, I told you a minute ago, we should put this CSS information here to some other file. And that's what we're going to do now. And to get rid of all of this inside our HTML file, because you should not put that here, because we want to separate content from styling. All right. So now, however, the styling content itself is just this one. All right. So now let's create a new file, and we save that file where? Well, we want to save it exactly in the same location, the same folder where now your current index.html file is stored. That's now very, very important when you do this saving of a file. So we make here in Sublime Text 2, we make file and then new file. Okay, it looks like this. And now straight away, what I can do is I'm going to save that file, make save as, and I store it exactly in the same location as my index.html file. This is my index.html file. This is my folder, right? And
we can see it.
Oh, you can't see it?
No.
Oh, why is that? But can you see my new file here that I've opened?
Yes.
Okay. All right, strange. Now when I make save as, then now you can't see that there's a pop-up image where with the folder structure, no?
No, we only see like a gray image of your editor.
Okay, then it seems Zoom is not for some reason showing, streaming that. Strange. Anyway, I can explain. You make in Sublime Text 2, once you have created this new file, make save as, and then you give it a name, and the name should be style.css. That's very important. Style.css. Okay. Well, you could, in theory, choose any name if you want. The important thing is .css. Okay, I'm style.css. I'm going to save that. All right, now you can see the new name appears up here. All right, so now what we need to do is inside HTML, we need to tell here inside the head part that we want to link up that new file to the current HTML file. So the browser understands it should read also the other file. Okay, this is how we do it. Like we make a tag called link. And then something like this comes, and straight away it jumps in here, href. And this is now where we put the name of our new file that we just created, style.css. Okay. So now the new file that we have created, new CSS file, is linked to our current file. What I want you to do now is make a refresh on your browser and see if you see any results. Are there any changes to be seen or not? Probably not, because we have not filled in anything into our style.css file. It's empty because all styling information is still here. So what I want you to do now is from H1, from that line, let's do it this way. Copy or cut these 3 lines. So basically the styling of H1. Like if you cut like this, cut it out and make save. Okay, and now you go and check in the browser, how does it look? Probably your headline is now in the old way, it's not styled at all. That's how it should be, because we have removed now this information and our browser doesn't know the styling information. But now what we want to do is inside our style.css, we're going to paste just that information. Just place it there. I'm going to indent that because we want this to be at the start right away here from the file. Okay, now I make save here. And now I check from the browser. I refresh the browser and what happens? Whoa, my styling is back of my headline, right? Okay. This should be in your case as well. So now I'm gonna cut also the information about the background color, which is orange color of my browser. So I'm going to take this out and make save here. And I'm going to just paste this information also in my style.css file. Okay, I refresh my browser. Now you can't see the browser, but yes, it's back. I have my background color now also there. Okay, so now we have moved basically our styling information away from here, and we've placed this into our separate file, which is the way to do it, actually, to put our styling information in a separate file. Okay, so now I can basically remove in the index file this styling information directly. I can do it like this. Okay, so quick question: does this work now for everyone? That you got this to work? That the CSS information is now inside a new file, and the browser is reading that file properly. So meaning when you look at your page in the browser, it shows again all the different colors, etc. Is that so? If somebody can give me feedback, or quite for all of you who it works, please just send me like yes in the chat.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yes.
What does this meter under the title "My First Page" mean? Because I don't have it in my document.
Okay, so here, this one, right?
Yes.
Now highlight. Yeah. Okay. Good question. So with meta, basically, we can give additional all sorts of so-called meta attributes as information to our browser. In this case, we are telling the character set that should be used, how to show characters of our page, of our page. They should be coded according to this standard called UTF-8. This is a standard that defines, for example, that Ü, Ö, Ä in the German language, that they will be properly shown or rendered by the browser. Because in other languages, they don't have these characters, you know. So, for example, if you put an Ä in here, like this, and if I would now check it out in the browser, I can see it shows the Ä properly. But if I would remove this one here and save and then check it out, then, okay, with Ä, it's not the case. But then some of these characters, they will not show up properly. That's why we need to put this line here. Then the browser will encode all the characters properly, meaning showing all the characters correctly. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, with meta, we can put, there are lots of meta attributes that we can put out there in HTML. All right, so this is just one of them. Let's then move on. But I understand it works for all of you, because I got only in the chat two feedback that the code works, like the CSS. Can I have some more, please, from all of you, more or less?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've got problems. I don't know if it's not correctly linked, but the color doesn't change, for example. So I'm not sure
Anymore. No. Did changed before, but now it doesn't.
Oh.
Okay, yes. Then most likely there is either a spelling mistake in the name of this the file name, like the href, or then the location where you have stored this style.css file is not exactly the same location as where you have stored the index.html file. You should double check that, making sure it's the same. Otherwise, yeah, I think this could be sources of fault. Okay. All right. So if it doesn't work still, then we can also go into a breakout room shortly and check, indicate that to me if there is need for that. All right. Then let's learn what is a class. Well, going shortly to my slides back. See it here. So a class is something whenever you we use it whenever you have multiple elements in HTML that you would style according to one and the same styling. Okay. So for example, you have many images. You have many images and all of them should, okay, now this works fine. All these images should be styled according to one and the same setting. Okay, still somebody has some problem. Also here where it still doesn't work, check out if there's a mismatch in the location or in the name of the file. All right, yeah, so let's say you have 100 images and they should be all styled according to the same thing. So it would be worth or nice if you do the styling once and you tell all the images, hey, all the 100, just be styled according to that one styling, right? And this is exactly when we start using a class, right? So we define in CSS the class once, and then we apply that class to all our HTML elements. So how do we do that? Well, in CSS, we are going to use a dot as a selector, right? Our selector was this one here as a selector. Before the curly brackets, we are going to use here the name of the class. You can freely choose it, but we put a dot in front. Okay, then our browser knows, aha, in CSS, okay, this is supposed to be a class. In CSS, in HTML, we need to put that class as well to that element. We need to assign that name to that element that we want to style according to that styling which is defined in that class. How? Well, inside the starting tag of our element, we put the name class. So no dot here in CSS, in HTML. So just put the class equal and then starting brackets, ending brackets, and in between you put the name of that class. Okay, so in HTML you just put the name of the class here, and in CSS you put dot, and that's it. All right, so let's do this now. We want to create a class called gallery inside our CSS. Let's do that. So I'm going to put here, and I call it gallery, right? So we make dot gallery, and then we make starting bracket, ending brackets, and well, we want to style all images, not well, all those ones where we assign them our class to. We want to style with width to be, let's say 300 or 400 px. Okay, the width, and then we say height, and we're going to make that also to be 400 px. So try that. And we make save. And then you test your HTML file in the browser and tell me what happens. What can you see in the browser once you have done this here? What can you see? Probably nothing has changed, right? So why nothing has changed? Because we need to put the name of our class, we need to add that in HTML to the element that should be styled according to this class here, right? So one recommendation is if you have defined a class, for example, in CSS once, you make copy, you double click on the name here, you copy it, and then you go to your HTML file. So this is in order to avoid spelling mistakes. And then we say here, this, let's say that these two images want to style according to this class. Then you go inside the starting image tag. We say class, and then it gives you equal sign, high comma, high comma, and then you put here this name of the class, right? And exactly the same thing you want to do. You want to add this class also to the second image. Well, why not put it to the third one as well, if you wish. Which means now all these images, they should be styled according to that size. Test this out and see whether this works for you. Okay, some feedback I got. This works, yeah. All right. Okay, so now maybe we put this also to the fourth image because we want to have all images to be styled according to that. So now you have already some tiles. It looks like tiles on your website, right? So yeah, let's look here. This is the information that is in the styles file. So now what I want you to do is, as a little exercise, the last two images, they should be styled differently according to a different class. All right. So meaning I want you to create now a new class in CSS. You can call it, for example, gallery 2, and you make the width and height a little bit different. And then you go and the last two images in HTML, they should be styled according to, well, to the new style, like the gallery 2. Do that now as a little exercise. Okay, so this is the solution here. What I did, I created a new here a new class. Yeah, I call it gallery 2. And while the width I put to 200 pixels, 200 pixels. And now I changed here the class name of the last 2 images just to gallery 2. Gallery 2. Okay, and that's basically it. And then the last 2 images, they show in a different size. All right, I guess that's probably now quite clear. What is a class in CSS? Well, whenever you want to style multiple images according to one and the same styling, then you create a class for that. And then all you do is all the elements that really should be styled according to that setting in that class, you just attach here in the HTML element that class like this. All right. So the thing is, I want to mention this already here. Often an element like the images or any other element may be styled according to multiple classes. Okay, so in one class you deal with the size, in another class you deal with, I don't know, background color or something else. All right, so then if you want to attach multiple classes to one and the same HTML element, you make basically, so it doesn't make sense now to do it this way, but just to show you, you make a space here, you leave a space and you put the second class here. You make a space and you put another class there. Okay, so then this element img is basically styled according to the styling which is mentioned in all of these various classes, which means you will probably later find in your code, when you deal with sort of more established websites, multiple classes being attached to one and the same element. Okay, so, and the thing what you should remember by that is not only leave the space between the classes, but the last one in this row here, like this is now the last class, this is the strongest. Okay, so it can override some of the settings, for example, that has been styled or defined in this other class. Just remember that the last one is always the strongest. Right? So, because, well, maybe I can mention this also now. Later, when we come to Bootstrap, when we build our page in Bootstrap, you find that there are multiple classes being attached to one and the same element. And you may add your own class also on top, meaning along this list, and make sure that your own class is then the last one before the high comma, because that's then the strongest, meaning you can override some of the classes that are sort of predefined by Bootstrap. Just remember that the last one is the strongest, and your own class that you may add, then you need to put that to the last part here before the high comma. Anyway, so far so good about classes. Now we want to move on to the next selector type, which is element. It's called element. And let me switch shortly to my slides. So maybe I forgot quickly one thing. Before we move to IDs, let me introduce this other thing, this hover effect, because we may like to hover over images. It's quite a nice user experience effect. How can we program that? If you move with the mouse over it, the image gets slightly less visible. Well, we do this exactly with this code here. In CSS, we make dot, in our case, the name of our class, gallery, and then semicolon, colon behind it, and then hover. and then curly bracket starting, ending, and we say opacity colon 0.8, which means this, we make the image to be slightly transparent, 80% visibility, but only at the moment when you hover over that effect. Let's quickly do this, because then we have learned this now. Let me share the code here. Let's go to CSS. We're going to say here dot gallery, yeah, curly brackets starting, gallery colon hover. Okay, so the hover effect applies now to this class, and we're going to say here opacity. We're going to put to 0.8. Make sure it's point and not comma. 0.8. And now we're going to test. Okay, yeah, this seems to work. Yeah, test this now in your browser to see how this plays out. You can put it also to 0.5 if you wish. All right, then we have learned also a little bit about one of the many nice user experience effects that we can apply to our website. In this case, this hover effect, if you go with the mouse over it. Okay. So then let's move on to, I give you still a minute, maybe. All right, so far so good with that. Let's move on now to our ID issue, and that is the following. So overview, so we've learned classes like this, put a dot in front. Whenever we want to address in CSS an ID, an element by its ID, we put a hash in front and then the name of that ID. Okay, how do we add an ID to an element in HTML? Well, we just say ID equal, and then between the high commas, we put the name, the ID name. And it's up to you what you choose here as the name of an ID. So now the question is, what is an ID? Why do we need an ID? Well, we have said a class is something we use then when we want to style. We create one style and we apply this to many, many other elements. Now, that was a class. An ID is something that is unique to a very specific element. You want to style that only that element according to something. Then you give that element an ID name, like you have your own, well, name. Your parents have given you your own name. So that's how we can give an element an ID name, its own name. Okay. So, and we do that by making ID and then that name. All right. And in CSS, we just refer to this, which means we can then style individual elements with it via an ID. Right. So, and what we want to do is we want to style the text that we have. We have 2 paragraphs. We will style them differently because, well, maybe we want to change the color, or we want to change the font size or the font, because we want to learn also to put a different font to these various paragraphs. How do we do that? Well, on one hand, it is, let me show, it's here. Yeah. So if you want to change the font to an element, we use the declaration called font family. Okay. And then we can say which font should be used, right? And also font size you can declare here. Well, there are different, actually, let me see here, we see it, additional parts that you can put to the font family. So on one hand, yeah, it's a name of that font, okay? And then you can put here some more information. This is the fallback font. So separated by a comma, and then fallback. And then here you can define whether it should be serif or without serif, non-serif, okay? This you don't necessarily need here. It works also just with this one. But yeah, anyway, what you see here, yeah, there are some things also that you can do to your font, like the font style, italic, like it's like going forward a little bit. Font size, we mean also a font weight, you can put it to bold, for example. Anyway, the question is now, if you put something like this there, Times New Roman, probably you're familiar with that font from, I know, from Word or something like this. How does the browser know that font, how it looks? Any ideas? Well, the thing is, on our computer, by default, it's on the Windows machine, as well as on the Mac, as well as on Linux. By default, it holds a whole range of standard fonts. And it's somewhere on the computer in some file, is this font being stored, how it, with all the declarations to it, how it should look like, etc. All right, that's why the computer knows this font and the browser then also knows. However, when we build websites, we want to have maybe fonts that they are not standard fonts, and our computer doesn't know them, which means the browser doesn't know them. So then we need to get information from somewhere else. All right, we come to that in a moment when we look at Google Fonts. But first, let's do a little exercise in learning how to add an ID to each of these text paragraphs, and then let's add a different font to each of these. Okay, paragraphs. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here, and now we do it the other way around. We're going to start to say we give an ID first here, define the ID name here. So within the starting tag of our first text, I make ID equal, and here now I can define what should be the name, and I call this maybe text 1. Okay, so this is now the ID name, first one, and I give my second paragraph another name, meaning I give it an ID, and I put here text 2. All right, now I have two IDs, which means in CSS now I can use this name to refer to this paragraph. That's what we're going to do. Leave it for a second. Okay, so as mentioned before, once you have defined an ID name or a class name or something, next time you use it, copy paste. Yeah, I double click in, you make copy, and now I go in CSS and I go here, and now I need to declare this as an ID. Can somebody tell me what do I need to put here in CSS in front of the name of the ID, so that the browser knows that this is meant to be an ID? Okay, a hashtag somebody mentioned. Yeah, that's correct. So in CSS, I first need to put now a hashtag, so the browser knows, okay, this is to be treated as an ID. Okay, and now I make like this. And now I can specify what for example, the font should be different. We call font family. Okay, here family like this. Now I can specify. In my case, I think Verdana is also something that is known to the browser. You can choose freely if you know the name of a font here, or then I go and copy the second ID because I want to give a different font there. So then I come here, oops, come here. Again, I put my hash there, text2, and brackets starting, and then also here font and family, like here. And I say Helvetica, I think should be another one. Okay, I make save, and now let's check it out in the browser, and it looks different there. Yes. Okay, so text 1 has a different font than text 2, the second paragraph. If you want, you can change also the font size. Font size. I don't know what could it be. 24px here. And then you can see if you check it in the browser, yes, the font size also changes. If you want to change the color, you can do that. And I want to make that to be then my text is going to be blue. Okay. So I give you a moment to play a little bit around with that. Then we have understood, I think, what is an ID and what is a class, right? Okay, so then what we want to do is we want to look, how can we choose a Google font? All right, and to do that, I want you to go to the Google Fonts page. And before we now go there, hang on, a few explanations. So over there, we find lots of fonts. You can search for the font that you like or what you think for your target group, for your page works fine. Then what you need to do is you go and you can copy 2 parts of code. Yeah. And that is, on one hand, it's the HTML code that you need to put inside the head part in the HTML document. And then you copy a second part, which is then regarding the style that you use, like the font family, the correct one. And this is then what you put in your CSS file. All right. That's roughly it, those 2 things. Now let's go to the Google Font website. So everybody goes there, and I can do it also here. So in my case, I go to fonts.google.com, and then you can, well, choose the font. I choose this one here, and I make select here. Oh yeah, remove. So if you have chosen, if you find that if you have selected a font, you go here to select this style, and then on the side here you get all that information that you need. Right. So this is the information that needs to go to the HTML part inside the head tags, within the head tags. And this down here, this is, as you can see, our font family. We've just learned that earlier. We put Verdana. Now we put the name of this font. Okay, that we have taken from here. It should be cursive. Okay, this is another setting to it. That's it. So now I can copy this one, and I go to my HTML file, and I put that up there, just maybe underneath my link where I put the information regarding my style.css file. I show you in a moment. So I do that. And then I go and copy this other part, like font family, and I put that to my CSS file. So do that as well. You can, for example, like from the second paragraph, like the text2 ID, I put it there. And now check this shortly. I can see it has changed. So now let me show you the font, the script, text editor. So first, what I did here, I pasted that link stuff, which I copied from the Google Fonts page, and I paste this right underneath here my style.css file. Okay, so now basically what my browser will do once it loads my HTML file is sees, aha, it should link that particular font to be found where? Oh yeah, on the Google page. So it goes to the Google page, loads that font, and then the browser stores it in the cache and knows, okay, this is the font to be used. It's aware of it. And now in CSS, we can tell then that font family name. Okay, so I do that here and I put that cursive. So this is the line from Google Font that I copied from there. You put that just here. And then if you look at your browser, make refresh, you will see, okay, yeah, Google Font appears. It's correctly shown. I hope that's also working with you. So can somebody just give me feedback that you are able to follow, or just maybe a few of you, did it work for you? All right, very good. Okay, yeah. All right, so then we know how to use Google Fonts. Well, latest at the time when you then design your own project, that's something you need to take care. However, how is it if we want to choose a certain font for our entire page? Where should we put that styling information, right? Now we have put it to this particular paragraph, right? Because we want only that paragraph to use that particular font. But maybe if you build a proper page and you say, this is the font I want my entire page to be using, where do you put the styling information? Can somebody just shout it in? Under which selector in the CSS? Where do you put it? Does anybody know? You can type it also in the chat if you wish. What should be the name of the element or ID or whatever in CSS. So if you want to make a styling to something that refers to the entire page, what is the element that refers to the entire page? Like the biggest box where we later put everything inside? Yeah, it's the body, exactly. So, which means if we check here our index page, yeah, our body starts here and ends here. Okay, then that's maybe the easiest then to use this tag. Then we go here and we do here. And then you can put here the font family that should be your general font to be used for the entire page. That's how to go. So I put now my new font in here. And I look at the page in the browser, and I can see, oh yeah, okay, all the text has changed except, well, this first paragraph has not changed. Why is that? All my headlines, everything has changed to this new font, but the first paragraph not. So why is that? I don't know, how is it for you? Is it similar? It should be, but why?
Because we put text 1 on the first paragraph.
Exactly. We have defined that there should be another font, actually. And we put this to be as an ID. Okay, now here's the thing, what you should remember. The weight of sort of doing the manipulation to an element is via an ID. It's the strongest. It's about 100 times stronger than if you just put the name of an element itself. Okay, so which means by making changes via an ID to an element, it forces the browser to do it much stronger than it would do it by telling it inside just a regular ID name, and not ID name, but element name, or even class. Class is weaker than an ID. Remember that. So which means later when you style your page and you want to override, let's say, some classes or some settings in the body, etc., then attach an ID to your element and you put the settings there as you want it to look, and then it most likely will happen because it's the strongest. Okay, so there is a I don't know how to call it, it's a kind of force, like what this different these different selectors have, and element is the strongest in this case. Okay, remember that, because also later, once we come to Bootstrap, where we have a lot of classes, etc., involved, you want to override some of the pre-defined sort of CSS stuff, because Bootstrap comes with a huge amount of classes, right? That's why everything looks also so beautiful and does all the responsive design, etc., quite automatically. But if we want to override something there on our own, then it's a good thing to choose an ID, for example. Well, we come to that later once more when we deal with Bootstrap. Bootstrap basically is a framework that we will tap into with ready code parts, etc. But we learn all of that later. Anyway, so far so good regarding what is an ID. I think we have understood this now. We've also understood what is a class. Now how we use Google font has become also clear, right? Then what we want to do is next, or we could do is, we could add call to action button, that leads to another page, for example. Typically, it may lead on the website to a sub page within your entire web page, because maybe you have several .html files. Then you can jump to another file, or with what's nowadays often done with a call to action button is, especially if you have a one-pager design, that you click on the call to action button and you jump deeper, lower on the further down on the page, on the one page. It just jumps to a so-called new section, to another section. But now we want to jump to another page. In this case, why not jumping also to our HTML page? So any ideas how could we do that? How did we jump to our HTML page earlier? Like we have done this already now in our HTML document.
With a link.
Yeah, with a link. Okay, with a what's the name of the tag of the HTML element that we use? It's the A. That's for link, right? And that's how we did it here. Okay, so this is basically what we did. We jumped. If we click on this text here, yeah, we jumped to this page, defined as href. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to use a button to jump also there. So now tell me, how can we add a button to an HTML page? So it appears to be a button. Somebody tell me. Okay, it's called button. So let's do this. BU button. And then here we say like more. Well, that's often like on call to action buttons. It's like this. We say more. All right. Then let's see how this appears in our browser. What does it appear? Okay, yeah, it's a little small tiny thing, little button. We can click on it with the mouse. What happens? Nothing. Nothing happens. It's just a button. It appears to be a button that is clickable. All right. So now I told you with this button we want to jump to the HTML page. Right? And we've learned earlier with this line here, we're jumping to the HTML page when we click here on this link. So what I want you to do now is you copy this line here, because we can straight away need this. You put it underneath here. Okay. So now what I want you to do is to make a space before the HTML and after the HTML here. So if this one is the link that we can click to go to somewhere, and this is just a text, yeah, and it works, we know, why not then just taking our button, our entire button here, this one, you cut it and you just replace this text here. Oh, nothing, something weird has happened now, just. Okay, so I cut this one and I'm gonna put it here like this. And now I make save, and then you can do the same and check it out if now the button leads you to the website. And what happens? Does it work for you? Yeah, exactly. So this is how we create a call to action button, right? So instead of putting the link text here, meaning between the starting tag of our anchor point and the ending tag, we just put here our button. And it's the same. Okay, let's do this quickly. we want to make another link, but it should be a tile. It should be an image that should go to lead us. So why don't we put this image here? Okay. So again, now this, no, it doesn't work like this, sorry. Because I forgot here, this one. So try that out. So instead of the text, yeah, we can put a button there, or we can put an image. That becomes then our link. Okay. Seems to be clear, right? Well, if we want to style our button, and we do that quickly because the button is rather small there. How can we style our button that we have now on the page? Any ideas? We want to make it bigger and we want to make it colored, because call to action buttons, they should have a standing out color like red or orange. So a strong contrast between the background of the page and the foreground and the call to action button, because we should really see the call to action button quite clearly. So how do we do the styling of a button? Can somebody tell me? What should we do? Now let's say all buttons on our entire page, they should look all one and the same, which could be actually a good thing. So the page appears to be coherent. What do we do? Yeah, we could create an ID. So let's say if you want to have different buttons to have all their own color each, then it would make sense to give each an ID. But now all buttons should be the same. So which means we use just the ID, our element name, button, and then curly brackets. And we say, let's say font size, we make, I don't know, what should I, maybe 30 px. Okay, and I make background color. It should be, I don't know, in my case, I have orange background, so I put this to be black. I know, well, what could you, I put it to green. Okay, so then your button should be bigger, right? That appears now on the page. Is that correct? All right. So this is how you can style that one, right? Now, just a second. Okay, so yeah, so far so good. There are plenty of things you could style for the button, like the round shaped corners, like the border around it and so forth, like the space between the text and the border and so forth. But you can look up such things all on with the different properties, like on the overview of CSS, like in W3 Schools or somewhere. Look that up. Okay, now finally, before we come to close for today, what I wanted to show you still is how can you add actually a YouTube video to your page, right? That's what you sometimes want to do. And in order to do that, let me switch to my slides. So if you want to add a YouTube video, it's quite simple. You go on YouTube, you select your video that you would like to sort of embed in your page. There are typically close to where the button subscribe is, it says here share. Okay, you click that. Then it opens something like this. Well, you're familiar with that already. Maybe you can copy the link and send it somewhere, etc. But you can you can click embed. So you click embed here, and then you get some code like embed video. That's the code. You can even define here where the video should start. If you want to only start at the particular location, you can click that and tell where. So, but this code basically, it holds a thing called iframe. So this is the HTML element that allows you to embed a YouTube video. So there comes a whole range of information with that, like the width and the height, etc. of the video. Then the link to it, right? Yeah, and that there should be, yeah, there should be, it should be put to autoplay and so forth. Yeah. So you copy that text, that code, and you then place it to your HTML file. That's what we're going to do. Right now, I have already selected some of this code. I went to the YouTube page and copied it from there. And then I'm gonna put this now somewhere here. And after that, if I check my page, I can see the YouTube
we can
video.
see that.
Sorry? Oh, okay. Thanks. I forgot to show you the code. This one here. Okay, so what I did is I went to YouTube and I copied the embedding code, and now I placed it just underneath here of my images of my previous code. Okay. So I make save. And after that, I can see the video is being embedded in my here you may have something else. Oops. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Did somebody manage to get this done? Okay. Some people it works. Yes. Okay. All right. And you can then define the size basically with either you can style that as well in CSS, like width and height, but you then need to give it some ID, name that video, for example. Or if you want to have all videos to have the same size, then you choose class for the styling. For the selector, you create a new class, you put the size, the width and height of the video, and then you attach that class also to your iframe, for example, here. And then you could remove those. If you have styled width and height in CSS, then you can remove that here. Okay. So I hope this was now not too fast, or how was it? The speed, was that okay or too fast? Maybe you can give me shortly feedback in the chat, or you can also just shout by switching on your mic. Was it okay, the speed? Were you able to follow?
Yes.
All right. Okay, I can see only okay, it was good. All right. A little bit fast, okay. All right. So what I will do is I will upload the video later today to the Moodle page. So if you want, you can go back to the stuff and then according to your own speed, hopefully then look at it again. All right. Otherwise, I've understood. Yeah, it's quite okay. Yeah. So now basically we have learned how well we can style more elements, right? According to a class, according to an ID, we've learned about fonts like Google Fonts. We've learned how to add a call to action button, and now also how to add a video from YouTube. But all these elements, they are sort of, well, they're just put there. Yeah, we styled them, but there is no order given, right? No structure to the page. All right. So we need to learn, of course, a little bit more to understand how to do that. And therefore, next week, we're going to learn something about that our elements, they are so-called boxes. Most elements, we can treat them as a box. They have distances on the side and on the top. They have distances within the content until the border, etc. And we can all specify that. And with that, sort of, we can then start building boxes next to each other, or we can build grids, how they are being ordered and so on. All of that, we're going to start a little bit next week. And then the week after, we're going to build a website from scratch. And then we go into Bootstrap and so forth. Okay. But anyway, I hope you were able to learn quite a bit of new stuff today. And yeah, are there any questions at this point? Okay, it seems not. Then that's it for today. So thank you very much. And I hope we're going to see you again next week then at HDM, hopefully. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome.
Bye.